It's rare to watch a political interview and feel like you're witnessing a shift instead of a scramble. Most of the time, leaders dodge, deflect, or try to survive the moment. But this one felt different almost immediately. Mark Carney didn't come across as someone reacting to pressure. He sounded like someone who already knew where things were heading and was comfortable letting everyone else catch up. From the opening minutes, the tone was unmistakable.
And Trump faces midterm elections next fall. The U.S. Supreme Court is set to rule on whether his tariff scheme is legal or not. Is one strategy simply to wait him out, to let events potentially take over?
Well, certainly a strategy is not to rush into a bad deal, and that's what we've been very disciplined about. And every week that goes by, the more that we're developing our economic strategy at home, the more we're developing those relationships abroad, the stronger we get.
Calm, measured, unhurried, no panic in his voice, no defensive posture, just a steady confidence that suggested something deeper than spin. And right away, he dropped the line that framed everything that followed. Canada is not rushing into anything, not for Washington, not for markets, and not even for Donald Trump. That's where things get interesting, because for decades, Canada has been spoken about as the quieter partner in North America. Dependable, polite, often reactive. The assumption, spoken or unspoken, was that when the United States applied pressure, Canada adjusted. Carney flatly rejected that premise. He made it clear that Canada will not panic, will not fold, and will not sign deals that weaken its workers, industries, or sovereignty, even if the pressure is coming from a U.S. president who thrives on urgency and leverage. And this wasn't bravado. It was strategy. When asked directly whether one approach might simply be to wait Donald Trump out, with U.S. midterm elections looming and the Supreme Court set to rule on the legality of Trump's tariff framework, Carney didn't take the bait. He didn't insult Trump. He didn't speculate about American politics. Instead, he delivered a sentence that quietly flipped the power dynamic.
Well, you prompted me on the defense spending, that $80 billion. That's an enormous amount of money. That's necessary to protect our Arctic. It's necessary to make sure the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces have the right equipment. But a lot of that, instead of 70 cents on every dollar going south of the border to the United States defense contractors, a lot of that is now going to be spent here, and it's going to help develop other industries. So all of that puts us in a better position. So yes, is it a better position to be disciplined, have the tough negotiations, which we're having, have those discussions, and then if a good deal is there, yes, we will sign it. But if it's not there, we're not going to sign a bad deal.
He said the goal is not to rush into a bad deal. Full stop. Here's why that matters. In trade negotiations, urgency is weakness. Trump's approach has always relied on compressing time, creating chaos, and forcing counterparts to choose speed over substance. Carney's response was the opposite. He explained that every week Canada waits, it's not standing still. It's strengthening its domestic economy, expanding trade relationships abroad, and building resilience at home. Time, in his telling, is not an enemy. It's an asset. That's a subtle but important shift. Canada isn't holding out because it's stuck. It's holding out because it's getting stronger. And from the reactions online, people noticed. Supporters described it as the first time in years a Canadian Prime Minister sounded unbothered by Washington.
You called yourself a politician, though. You didn't used
Well,
to do that.
I am now a politician. I have to admit, I am Prime Minister, so
Yeah.
I am a politician, but I'm still a pragmatist.
It would be easier for you, though, if you had a majority. And you're inching towards that.
Well,
You are. You're one away now. Because you have managed to lure a couple of Conservative MPs to the Liberal caucus. Are you courting other Conservative MPs to push you over the edge?
Well, it's interesting. I wouldn't have chosen that verb, lure.
Courting? Luring?
Lure or courting.
Okay.
What I would choose is they are attracted by what we are doing. And that's a key element. You're looking in Parliament to have the confidence of the House in the vernacular, in the term. So you need support of obviously your own caucus, but others to either support or not stand against what you're doing if you're in a minority.
So did they come to you and say?
Yes, absolutely.
And did you meet with them, with Chris Doncheron and Michael
I
Long?
met with them just at the end of what was a process, but in those cases, they came to us They were interested in, they were attracted by what the government is doing. This is a positive vote for the government, supporting the government at a crucial time for a country. And I'd underscore that there's a sense of responsibility that comes obviously with these roles. And we are in a better position as a country, my judgment, 9 months in to this government. Economy's better, we've got a plan, we're implementing that plan, we're making progress internationally, we're becoming more independent as a
Critics tried to frame it as risky, but even they struggled to explain where the weakness was supposed to come from. Patience, when backed by preparation, is hard to attack. That theme, preparation over performance, kept coming up, especially when the conversation turned to defense. For decades, Canada's defense posture leaned heavily on the United States. Equipment purchases flowed south. Systems were U.S.-centric. The assumption was that American military dominance would always be there, always aligned, always reliable. Carney made it clear that this era is ending, not out of hostility, but out of realism. He talked about the $80 billion defense investment not as a symbolic gesture, but as a structural shift. Protecting the Arctic, equipping the Canadian Armed Forces properly, building domestic industrial capacity. And here's the detail most people miss. Historically, about 70 cents of every defense dollar went straight to U.S. contractors. Carney said that's changing. More of that money will now be spent inside Canada, developing Canadian industries and supply chains. This isn't just about military hardware. It's about sovereignty, economic security, independence. The idea that Canada's safety shouldn't depend on proximity to the United States, but on capabilities built at home. In my view, this is one of the most consequential parts of the interview because it reframes defense spending as nation-building rather than obligation, and Carney was clear-eyed about the politics of it. He acknowledged the negotiations are tough. He acknowledged there's pressure, but he also said something that landed hard. If a good deal is there, Canada will sign it. If it's not, Canada won't sign a bad one. No drama, no theatrics, just a line in the sand. Then came one of the more surprising moments, politically at least. Carney revealed that Conservative members of Parliament have crossed the aisle to support his government, not because they were coerced or promised anything, but because they were attracted to what the government is doing. That word choice mattered. When the interviewer suggested lured or courted, Carney corrected him gently but firmly. These MPs came forward on their own. That doesn't happen often. Opposition politicians don't defect lightly. Careers are built on loyalty and identity. When they cross, it usually signals something deeper. Confidence in leadership during a moment of national consequence. Carney framed it as responsibility. He said these MPs believed supporting the government was the right thing to do at a crucial time for the country. And he added context that's easy to overlook. 9 months into his government, the economy is stronger, there's a plan in motion, international relationships are expanding, and Canada is becoming more independent. Whether you agree with him or not, the political gravity here is real.
And it's a very fluid situation internationally. That's one of the reasons why we're being so aggressive in talking to different partners, developing different defense, security, and economic partnerships. What I would say to Canadians, the good news is virtually everybody wants to do more with Canada. So that's true in Asia, whether it's the Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, the ASEAN countries, which are almost a quarter of the world's GDP. It's Indonesia, it's the European Union, it's the UK, it's the countries of the Gulf. United Arab Emirates is going to invest $70 billion, $70 billion in Canada. They've made a commitment to that. They made the commitment. We didn't even ask, that comes. So people want to do more with Canada because we have what the world wants. We have the values to which most of the world aspires. We're a reliable partner, and we're an increasingly confident nation that has ambition. So people want to deal with us. Now, that is good for our economy. It's good for jobs. It's good for the future. It's good for our independence from the United States. But it also brings an opportunity to help shape a world that is more dangerous, more divided. And we see an example. I'll give you one example of that. We are a member of something called the Coalition of the Willing to support Ukraine. So the United States is not a member of the coalition of the willing supporting Ukraine. We are major European countries, Australia's in, United Kingdom as well. So we're helping to shape, to create the possibility of a lasting peace there through security guarantees and other support.
Finally,
This wasn't about partisan victory. It was about stability. From the reactions I've seen, even critics acknowledge that something unusual is happening when ideological opponents decide steadiness matters more than party lines. Then the interview widened its lens, and this is where the global implications became impossible to ignore. Carney described a shift that would have sounded unthinkable a decade ago. Canada is no longer chasing global partners. It's no longer selling itself desperately for attention. Instead, the world is coming to Canada. Investors, governments, trade partners, not because Canada is flashy, but because it's stable. Here's the part most people misunderstand. In global politics, reliability is currency. While Trump's America is unpredictable, tariffs one day, threats the next, Canada is offering consistency, predictable policy, clear values, long-term planning. And according to Carney, that's exactly what countries across Europe, Asia, and the Gulf are looking for right now. He rattled off examples almost casually. Southeast Asian nations representing nearly a quarter of global GDP, the European Union, the UK, the United Arab Emirates, which committed billions in investment without Canada even asking. That detail alone says a lot. Capital doesn't move toward chaos. It moves toward confidence. Carney wasn't boasting. He was explaining a dynamic shift. Loudness may dominate headlines, but dependability wins partnerships. And when partners line up to work with you, negotiations start from strength, not fear. This is where Canada's role in the coalition of the willing supporting Ukraine came up. Carney noted that while the United States isn't part of that coalition, Canada is, alongside major European nations, the UK and Australia. In other words, Canada isn't just reacting to global instability. It's helping shape responses to it. That's a different posture than we're used to seeing. And it reframes Canada not as a follower, but as a participant in setting global direction. Then came the most confrontational moment of the interview. The journalist asked outright whether Carney looked like a hypocrite for supporting oil sands expansion after spending much of his career warning about climate change. This is the kind of question that rattles politicians. It forces a choice between denial and deflection. Carney chose neither. He acknowledged reality. The world still uses hydrocarbons, and it will for decades under virtually every credible scenario, including aggressive net zero pathways. He cited International Energy Agency projections showing reduced but still significant oil use. Then, he reframed the issue. The real question isn't whether oil is used, but what kind of oil, produced how, and at what carbon cost. This is where the strategy comes in. He argued that if hydrocarbons are going to be part of the global mix, they should be low cost, low risk, and low carbon. He pointed to the Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta, emphasizing decarbonization pathways that would remove the equivalent of millions of cars worth of emissions from the system. Agree or disagree, the logic was coherent. Transition doesn't mean pretending reality doesn't exist. It means managing it responsibly. Carney didn't deny his past positions. He integrated them into a framework that balances environmental goals with economic and energy security. And that composure mattered. He didn't get defensive. He didn't flinch. He explained. By the end of the interview, the through line was impossible to miss. This wasn't a leader clinging to survival. This was a prime minister outlining a future where Canada doesn't fear Washington, doesn't beg for allies, and doesn't define itself by anyone else's mood. A Canada that builds real capacity. A Canada that attracts partners through stability. A Canada that negotiates calmly because it knows where it stands. This wasn't insecurity speaking, it was certainty. And if this interview proved anything, it's that Canada no longer sounds like the quiet junior partner in North America. It sounds like a country that understands its leverage and is finally comfortable using it. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing. I appreciate you.